Governor Greg Abbott has announced the construction of a base camp for nearly 2,000 soldiers on the southern border.
That camp will be in Eagle Pass, a sign of a more permanent Texas law enforcement presence. Fox 4 Stephen Dial joins us now with details on how the base will be completed. Stephen.
Texas military officials say 300 beds will be in place by April, and this is just a sign that the Operation Lone Star resources are not going away anytime soon. This 80-acre field in Eagle Pass near the Rio Grande River will become a base camp for the Texas Military Department, a physical show of the planned longevity of Operation Lone Star.
Is going to consolidate our forces. Again, as opposed to being scattered around many different places across this region, they will be operating out of one place. It will amass a large army in a very strategic area.
Governor Greg Abbott made the announcement Friday. Eagle Pass has been ground zero for the Operation Lone Star response. It also has been used as a political backdrop in response to the surge in illegal migrant crossings. Soldiers have been spread out during the operation, staying in border city hotels. While Abbott did not give a price tag, the legislature has allocated more than $5 billion for border security operations.
What's being incurred already in all these hotel rooms and other locations where the Guard are staying is going to be more expensive per person than what it's going to cost to house the Guard here.
Texas is in multiple legal fights with the federal government. The highest profile case involves Shelby Park, next to the construction site for the base camp. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the White House in a dispute over Border Patrol access to the park after Abbott closed it to the public. The governor says his plans are already making a difference.
This will organize substantial forces also to expand the razor wire barriers that are going up. In this area, listen, we've seen the effectiveness of the razor wire in Shelby Park, where crossings have gone from 3,000, 4,000, or 5,000 people a day to less than 1%.
The Texas Military Department expects the base to be operational this spring.
By mid-April, we'll have a 300-bed capacity, and then we'll add 300. Basically, the phasing is 300 additional beds every 30 days. Now, Operation Lone Star has been faced with some mental health issues and concerns. The Texas Military Department says that they will be able to also centralize their psychological resources for those soldiers, and Governor Abbott believes having a central location, in his words, will boost morale.
Yeah. Well, if the bumbling Biden administration thought this was a stunt, or if that Greg Abbott was bluffing, well, they are now in for a very, very rude awakening. What you just heard there was confirmation that Texas is indeed building a military base at the southern border at Eagle Pass. This is the Texas Military Department, right? That's Texas's own military. A lot of people don't realize that Texas actually has its own military, a military that's constitutionally answerable only to the governor of Texas. It's off limits to the president of the United States, unlike, say, the National Guard. The Texas Military Department, the TMD, is already beginning construction of a Texas military base on 80 acres of land along the Rio Grande that will house up to 1,800 Texas National Guard soldiers as well as TMD soldiers, with the ability to accommodate an additional 500. Gang, this is amazing stuff. And by the way, welcome everybody to our Monday Night Live. It's great to see you. I'm Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor. We're here. Knowledge is our ultimate weapon, and that's what we focus on each and every single day on this channel. This is absolutely an extraordinarily bold move on the part of Texas forces, who continue to overtly and frankly brutally challenge the federal forces of the bumbling Biden administration, many of whom have reportedly flipped on Biden. They've turned on him. You've seen this, the Border Patrol Union. It's the largest union of U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agents. A couple of weeks back, they posted a message on X, right, formerly known as Twitter, that expressed their total and unwavering support of Texas Governor Greg Abbott and what's called Operation Lone Star, which is the operation he put into effect. It's an executive order from Austin, from Abbott, to secure the border with Texas officials, Texas forces, and push out any federal forces that try to get in their way. And what we're finding here is that the Border Patrol Union put up a tweet that basically declared their allegiance to the special operation of the Texas officials. And it was a defiant message, and it suggested that rank and file Border Patrol agents are simply not going to comply with the Biden administration order that would require them to go against their fellow Texas law enforcement agents and National Guard. And it is, without question, one of the most brazen acts of defiance against Biden, and a demonstration of just how powerless, just how ultimately impotent he is becoming. Now, thus far, I think the standoff between Texas forces and Biden's federal forces appears to be totally and completely one-sided. In other words, Texas forces have not given up an inch on the border. They're not allowing any federal agents or troops anywhere near the border. In fact, we've got video of federal forces being turned away, and they're basically, and again, I think they are it's voluntarily is a wrong term. It's almost like they're just kind of playing a game like, oh, darn, do we have to turn away? In other words, they fully support Texas forces and what they're doing. They don't want all these massive illegal immigrants coming in by the millions a year. Texas forces have taken over Shelby Park in Eagle Pass. I mean, you need to let this hit you. Federal agents used to use Shelby Park as a processing center for illegal migrants, right? Texas forces basically kicked them out and took over the entire park and closed down the border. There is no longer a processing center there. There is now, as we're seeing increasingly, a military base going up there. And now they're building a full-blown military base to house upwards of nearly 2,000 troops to be ready at hand for whatever needs arise at the border. Now, make no mistake, what we really are seeing here, big picture, is nothing less than absolute and total MAGA victory. This, make no mistake, is a MAGA superstate rising up within our nation. Our nation, in many respects, it's a nation within a nation, as it were. And we've talked about this before. But as we're becoming increasingly politically divided between blue states and red states, and more accurately, red counties versus blue counties. Red counties are about 80% of counties. Blue counties are a mere 20%. They tend to be coastal and very regionally specific, with the exception of some New Mexico counties and Colorado counties. But otherwise, the map of the United States is solid red. It's solid red. And we've had a study that found that in 2008, 60% of our counties were red. About 40% of the counties were blue in terms of land mass, in terms of how land mass works out. As of today, it's now 80% red, 20% blue. Blue has been cut in half. They basically all fled to the coastal elite cities, cosmopolitan centers and the like. And so what we're seeing, in effect, is a kind of MAGA superstate that's rising up that transcends blue states. It's actually, so if you think about all of Oregon's eastward counties, for example, I forget how many counties are in Oregon. Is it 24, 25? Let's say it's 25. 18 of their 25 going eastward are all MAGA red, totally red. If you got rid of one county alone in Oregon, Multnomah County, where you have Portland, every single Republican would win by 10 points in Oregon. That just gives you a sense of how regional the blueness is. And what we're really seeing here with Texas is ground zero of this MAGA revolt, this MAGA nation that's rising, this super state that's rising within the nation. We've talked about this before, but I think it really bears repeating of how this is happening, the dynamic that's behind this rise of a MAGA superstate. One of the key signs of how a larger state basically collapses in terms of its power, like we saw with the Soviet Union back in 1999. Scholars have studied that. How have nations imploded and then another nation rise up in its place? And what they found is that there does seem to be a pretty consistent pattern in that states first collapse geopolitically before they collapse domestically. In other words, scholars have noted that states that ultimately end up fragmenting internally actually first fragment outwardly, in that they lose their international prestige, which then in turn causes them to lose their internal domestic power. And so what we saw in the Soviet Union was that their internal collapse was actually preceded a few years prior by their collapse around their frontiers, like in Eastern Europe in 1989 and Afghanistan. And what happened then is that a chain effect took place because of these losses of territory and region in Eastern Europe and Afghanistan, such that the loss of that territorial external power in the frontiers ended up affecting the balance of power internally inside the nation proper, the union proper, as it were, such that the power center ended up getting tipped away from Moscow, or away from the Politburo, and more towards reformers like Boris Yeltsin and others who vied to take away power from the Politburo. And so I think what we're seeing here is that the radical and obvious weakness of the Biden administration that we first saw demonstrated internationally, right, beginning with the botched August, 2021 Afghanistan withdrawal debacle, and then followed up in 2022 by the total humiliating failure in Ukraine. And then the ongoing snubs that the Biden administration has been getting from China and from OPEC countries like Saudi Arabia. This all seems to be the catalyst in the eventual demise of Washington, D.C.'s power over Texas, and this growing red state coalition that's challenging Biden's imploding power and reasserting their own state sovereignty in a way that is looking akin to a massive MAGA state, a unified red conglomerate, as it were, in the midst of our nation. So the good news here, with this move by Abbott in building a military base, literally, with the Texas Military Department at the southern border, the good news here is that we're seeing red state governors like Greg Abbott, frankly, no longer waiting for the federal government to get its act together, which is a waste of time, because the federal government, as we're finding, is becoming more and more kabuki theater. The technical term is virtual politics, where we're increasingly finding out, as Tucker's interviews are exposing literally every week more and more, that they're all controlled by donors. They're all controlled by deep state. They're all controlled by NGOs, the three-letter agencies, all coming together, and basically, they are basically dictating the agenda of the government. And so then the politicians, the senators, the representatives, they all go out and they play their part, their ideological part, to make us think that when we vote for them because of some kind of ideological affinity with them, whether we're left wing or right wing, that makes us think like we're making a difference in Washington, D.C. And they want us to think that way, even though they know we don't. So their ideological characteristics in Washington, D.C. are kind of like the costumes they wear in a kabuki play. They're not real. There is no ideology in D.C. It's all power. It's all money. It's all the military industrial complex. We all know that now. It's all the deep state. It's all the FBI orchestrating events to the benefit of a DC elite that is desperately trying to hold on to global power. What we're seeing is it looks like red states pushing back against that. We are seeing the emergence of what is really the MAGA movement right now in the nation, until, of course, Trump comes back to power. Until then, a MAGA superstate is indeed rising in the form of 27, 28 states that are all filling the vacuum of the fledgling Biden administration's incompetence. So I think what we're seeing here is a real reawakening happening at the political level, but it's primarily contained within and circumscribed around the rise of increasingly sovereign states and, of course, the movement of increasingly sovereign red counties within blue states. So that's a huge development that's going on in the ongoing political realignment of the nation. We don't have to wait for Texas to tell the federal government to shove it. We don't have to wait for Texas to tell the federal government to shove it. This military base is a blatant symbol that Texas officials have already told them to do precisely that. So it's amazing stuff. We also got some breaking news here, guys. I've noticed Nikki Haley has announced in the last hour she will deliver a State of the Race speech tomorrow. I believe it's going to be in Greenville, South Carolina. There is no further information given, but a lot are speculating that she may be dropping out as of tomorrow. She's reading the writing on the wall. She's going to get absolutely horrifically humiliated in South Carolina, in the South Carolina primaries just coming up. What now? Just days away from now. Is it this weekend or next week? I think it's this weekend. This Saturday, if I recall. And you can't win national office if you lose your own state. Just ask Marco Rubio that. Marco Rubio dropped out the day after he lost Florida. That's exactly why Ron DeSantis had to vote remove himself. I mean, there was just no way he was going to get also his money dried up, but there was no way he was going to get humiliated in his own state. Go back to Florida, recover, lick your wounds, and go back to being the best governor outside of like Greg Abbott right now. Go back to being the best governor in the country that we have and stop being such a loser nationally. So Nikki Haley is delivering a State of the Race speech tomorrow. That is just breaking. We will see if she finally leaves the race and actually probably goes and joins the Democrats, because she is just a pathetic woke loser. And that's where pathetic woke losers go to die, is the Democratic Party. All right. That's all from me on this side. Hannah Brusen, Hannah, our producer. What do you got over there, Hannah? What's going on?
Hello, friends, and happy Monday, Steve. Happy President's Day.
Yeah, happy President's Day to you as well. That's right. My boy had the day off. I was like, why aren't you going to school? Why are you here? Why are you sitting around on the couch? It's President's Day, Dad. I'm like, oh, all right. I had to work.
Yes, we've got important news to cover, like
We've
Nikki
got
Haley.
important news to cover. That's right.
Well, after Nikki Haley had her intern post all of her week's tweets within 40 minutes, I'd say it's good for her to do a State of the Race too.
Gosh, she needs to drop. She is so pathetic. But we all know it's just for money. We know. Well, it's just for money, and it's just to hurt Trump, because the people who are paying her are Democrats who want to hurt Trump. And the irony is she is getting rich, but they're not getting any bang for their buck. There's no ROI here. If anything, Trump's just getting stronger.
Oh, absolutely. With those special golden shoes.
Aren't those great? Yeah.
Did anybody here get any gold shoes? Those were sold out so quickly.
Oh, in 4 hours, I read. Yeah.
Yes. Let us know if you did. But special welcome to all of you here in our virtual studio. It's so wonderful to be with you here on Monday nights. We are so excited to dive into all of your questions here and get into some boycott and boycotts. We've got some interesting things to cover. You'll see what I mean.
I can only imagine. You always have the most interesting boycott news. That's for sure.
If you don't know what we're talking about, y'all, every week, if you're an Insiders Club member, we cover all the things that should be boycotted and who you should be giving your dollars to support the alternative in a boycott. Yes, exactly. So we'll be getting into that tonight. We'll be talking about your questions. So if you're already a member and here in the virtual studio, go ahead and put your question in the chat with the word question and then your question, and we'll get into that. Yeah, I think I just wanted to mention, everyone, I've said this for a few weeks, but the day is coming soon, y'all, this week. As you guys know, we don't have any super chats. You probably have noticed that for quite some time. That's because we're demonetized. And this week is the week we are told that we may be able to apply again for remonetization. So who knows what's going to happen here? They may look at our account and do things we really don't want them to do with it, even more than what they've done. So it's really, really important that we all stay in touch here, especially going into this year. Steve can speak more to that in just a moment. But if you really love the analysis that Steve has and you want it going into this year, it's more important than anything. Please just click the link in the description, put your name and your email address in. That way you will be added to our email list and we'll always know how to contact you in case something happens. And we will never be separated that way. And if you want to come join us in the virtual studio, you'll be given that option as well with our Insiders membership, where we talk about boycotts and boycotts and all that stuff. So I just want to give you guys a quick update on that. A lot of you guys have so wonderfully asked about our channel and how to stay in touch with us. So if you got 4 to 6 private hours with us a month, come join our Insiders Club membership. We'd love that. Yeah.
It is awesome. And that's the thing. We learned about this with Alex Jones. We learned about this with so many others. You know, you can't depend on other platforms, even Rumble. You can't depend. You just even Twitter. I mean, every once in a while you hear Elon Musk talking about, you know, with the advertising boycott on Twitter and so forth. You know, he's like, well, you know, we may have to shut down at one point. By God's grace, that's not going to happen. But when he was at that New York forum where he told all of the, like, Eisner of Disney and so forth and all the big CEOs, F you, go F yourselves. He was making it clear, you know, we're not going to buckle to your woke demands. We're going to maintain a platform for freedom of speech. And his interlocutor, his interviewer, kept saying, so, but what do you do? I mean, you know, if all these advertisers pull out, what do you do? And then he blatantly stated it. He said, well, then you all killed a company. That's what you did. So we can't necessarily depend on external platforms to stay in touch with each other. What we have to do is make sure that we have our own platform that no other big tech or no other bunch of advertiser boycotts could ever get in the way of. So just click on the link below and sign up for our email list. That's the easiest way to make sure we'll always stay in touch with each other. That's the coolest thing in the world. And plus you get all this sort of back, you know, behind the stage, kind of backstage, kind of behind the scenes kind of information that comes through our email list as well. So make sure you click on that link below, sign up for our email list, and that way we'll never, ever lose touch with each other.
Exactly. We actually send out daily news summaries. So if you're on the go, that's a great place to get a summary of that. So I see questions coming in. So we're going to be talking about the New York trucker potential ban. We're going to be talking about Biden, of course, the polls. So if you have a question for Dr. Steve, just click that link in the description and we are going to be getting into all of it and more. So that's it. Just click below, at least put your contact info in, and we're going to dive in and kick it off with our boycotts and boycotts. So anything else, Steve, before we go into our members only time here?
No, let's go. I love chatting with everybody on YouTube, but most especially our Insiders members. We're about, you guys are amazing. Thank you for what a blessing you've been over these last few months since we've been demonetized. Hannah was just telling me we're getting close to 6,000 of you. It's just absolutely amazing. So from the bottom of my heart, I can't thank you enough. And again, if you're interested, just click on the link below, sign up for the email list. And at that point, you'll have an opportunity to sign up for Insiders Club and then join us on our virtual platform.
Love it. Well, thank you, YouTube, for watching. Come join us over here and we'll see you in a bit.